Hi there, I'm Chris Chapwanya. Welcome to another edition of Hard Talk. Snap elections or no snap elections? That is the question on the minds of many Guyanese following reports that the Alliance for Change is seriously contemplating bringing a no-confidence motion against the Donald Ramotar Administration. AFC Vice Chairman Moses Nagamutu said the recent revelation that government had already spent $4.5 billion of the $37.4 billion, which had been cut by the joint opposition from the $220 billion 2014 budget, was the last straw. A Partnership for National Unity says it will be meeting with the AFC to discuss a formal strategy in relation to the possible no-confidence motion against the government. The support of APNU is necessary if the move is to be successful. President Ramotar, on the other hand, has since indicated that his government is prepared to deal with the consequences of such an eventuality when the time arises. Many question the preparedness of the political parties and have expressed doubts, particularly about the opposition's ability to fund another elections campaign at this time. Joining me to discuss the prospect of a snap election and its possible consequences are People's Progressive Party Civics Member of Parliament, Odinga Lumumba, and social commentator and former member of the People's National Congress Reform, Dr. Faith Harding. Dr. Harding, Mr. Lumumba, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for inviting me too.
Since the results of the November 28, 2011 election, I think many Guyanese would have expected that the parties in Parliament, the PPPC, AFC, and APNU, would by now have found some way of working together for the good of the country, for the good of the people. From all indications, particularly around budget time, it appears as if this is not the case. And while many question whether the parties are ready and prepared for a snap election, there is also a concern, I believe, of if the electorate, the people, are ready for such an eventuality. My first question that I will throw out to both of you is, do you think Guyanese, are ready at this point in time for such a drastic move?
SNAP to me talks about disorder. And I think that's the feeling I get from the population. People feel a sense of chaos in their lives. You see chaos at the highest level in our governance structure, the parliament, and you see it at the central, the capital of our city, where a mayor gets out in the yard to hold a meeting on matters to deal with the city, and that's chaotic. So you don't have a sense of order, and a snap election will just bring that disorder to a higher level. So I'm hoping that good sense prevails and we try to bring the society, we bring Guyana to a level of order, and that will include holding elections on the date due, where people can prepare, where people will feel a sense of order, not only law and order, but social order in their lives. I don't think they feel it right now.
Mr. Lumumba, as an MP, you're in Parliament every week when Parliament is in session. Do you think that good sense will prevail?
Well, there are laws and reality about democracy. And any party in government, in Parliament, at any given time, for whatever reason they think is valid, can seek to recall a government and have elections. We can take cases like Italy, where every 3 or 4 months, sometimes they have elections. They recall the government. And I don't think people are doing these things willy-nilly. They must have some sound reasons. So I don't know what is driving AFC or driving APNU. But I think to some degree, I have to agree with Dr. Harding in that chaos and disorder, to me, that's what's driving those two organizations. The PPPC went to elections. We lost the majority in terms of parliament by 1 seat. But we still have a substantial majority in comparison with the other two political parties. It is my view that both parties should be more flexible in their relationship with the government side, so it allows us to function and wait the full 5 years to have regular elections. Now, what has happened is that a government must function. In order for government to function, a government has to have the requisite budget, the requisite funding to carry out his work to satisfy the citizens of the country. What we find for the last few years, the opposition has willy-nilly cut the budget. Now, you cannot be serious in life and in parliament when you try to disarm the president of a country. When you cut the budget of the office of president, even the security, you're exposing the president to danger. You're saying that the president of a country should not have security, should not have bodyguards, then anybody could harm him. But beyond that, from the more serious things, the elements that allow him to function, to allow him to administrate a country, you're taking that away from him. How can he represent a nation if he's weak, if he does not have funding to support those things that embrace his survival and his ability to administer? So we believe that some of the cuts by the opposition are unconstitutional. It's a constitutional question. We believe it's unconstitutional. And we believe we are within our realms to spend the requisite funding that's necessary to provide governance to this country and provide governance and provide the things that people require to ensure that they survive on a daily basis. So we are a different end on this matter. They believe we shouldn't, and we believe we should.
The opposition, the combined opposition, APNU and AFC, have said that they have taken issue. They've taken issue with several projects, programs that would have been presented not only in this budget, but previous budgets since the November 2011 election. And their contention is that there is a lack of transparency and accountability on the part of government. And as such, this has led them in several cases to reduce or remove completely the funding for various projects. The APNU leader, David Granger, says that the $4.5 billion that the government has spent following the cuts by the opposition was an act of lawlessness, and this is using his words. And he's saying that the funding was deliberately not approved and that the government's decision was the worst case of defiance we have had in the last 30 months. You've said that you believe and the government believe that they have a constitutional right to expend these amounts. And the AFC, APNU are saying that they don't. What role then does Parliament have, the National Assembly, in cases like this, when a budget is presented? What mechanisms are in place for them to approve or not approve? Do they have a right? The
cradle, supposedly, the cradle of democracy is the United States of America. That's what we're taught on a daily basis. That's what's perceived. That's what's presented to us. The House of Representatives of the United States continuously tamper with the initiatives of the President of America, Mr. Obama, from immigration, for appointments, for whatever programs he have to, whether it be public work program. And he's made a statement recently as last week that he must govern. And he cannot wait on the House of Representatives to govern. Why they're playing with their fingers. We have a similar situation in Guyana. The president has executive authority. We cannot wait on the opposition. If the opposition continues to derail progress in Guyana, derail programs and projects that we perceive as important to the development of the country, we have to proceed and let the courts determine whether we're constitutionally correct or incorrect. Obama is dealing with the same issues. It's a worldwide issue. Because you're in the parliament, that doesn't mean you can willy-nilly cut a budget. There must be some logic to this. We're not saying you don't have a role, but there must be a logical role. You cannot say, for example, how is this logical? If you have a specialty hospital that's going to take care of the poor that is affected by kidney and by liver and by heart, are we saying only the rich must be taken care of health-wise? We're saying we want to bring a specialty hospital in Guyana with international surgeons and physicians. So an ordinary man also can be taken care of when he has certain kind of complication. The opposition cuts this. They cut it because they say there's a problem with two contractors. The AFC attorney and leader, Mr. Ramjatan, has represented one of these companies, but yet he is taking this to Parliament to deal with this issue. He does not deal with the foremost important issue, which is the care of the people. Let's go to the Marriott. Everyone in Guyana and around the world knows Guyana needs another 5-star or 4-star hotel. The AFC supported by Mr. Badal. Mr. Badal is a personal friend of mine. I like him as a person. The Pegasus is fine. I don't have a problem with the Pegasus. I spend a lot of time in the Pegasus when I want to eat or have a drink or have a social time. However, you cannot be against the development of a new hotel. And because you're funding the AFC or part of the donors of the AFC, allow the AFC, through Mr. Ramjatan and his colleagues, to come to Parliament and say, let's not provide any funding for the Marriott Hotel.
We've had this same issue raised on this very program here in the presence of Dominic Gaskin from the AFC. And it was raised the same way that you have just raised it, that the association of Mr. Badal with the AFC would have contributed to their position on the Marriott. They've denied that completely, and they've said that the transparency surrounding the investment, the issues that they have with Mr. Brassington are what are the forces driving them.
But that can't be correct. Let me say this. That can't be correct because they have argued, including Mr. Badal, that we don't need a Marriott. So whether they switch the argument to transparency is not the issue. But their initial argument and the original position was Guyana doesn't need a Marriott. And we should allow the private sector to do that. In essence, they have said, unless the private sector encounters or embraces a project, we should not touch it. Now, even countries as America and France have got involved in projects that are necessary to drive the economy. Most of the public works projects in America are funded by government and are due between a public and private partnership. France, the French government, owns many companies, a partnership with many companies. Let's look at China. So you can look at Russia. Most of the developing world, you have seen ventures where the government funds private sector projects to drive. At some point in time, we may need to pull away from that. But when your economy is weak, when you're a struggling, undeveloped country, you need government participation in major projects. We would have never got the Berbice Bridge if the private sector did not come together with the government in the form of the NIS. And we probably would not get a new bridge over the Demra River unless there's such a combination of forces.
Do you think the public-private partnership arrangements, deals, packages that we've been getting into for these projects, you mentioned the Berbice River Bridge, for instance, are the best possible deals that we could have got?
A best possible deal is a deal that exists. You cannot say it's not best when there's no other deal. Where are the other deals? In essence, if I say this is the option, and you saying that's not the best option, provide the information. Show me where is the other option. Where's the other option to the Berbice Bridge? Where's the other option to the Marriott? Where's the other option?
T&T.
Right, where are the options? Let's find the options.
Dr. Harding, I want to bring you in on this point. I know you have a wealth of experience as it relates to the functioning of democracies. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Lumumba would have mentioned a few moments ago the U.S. and then the situation with Obama and his administration. We do see also on television that there is constant back and forth between the White House and Congress. And in instances where projects are not going through for whatever the case may be, whether it's not support in Congress, in the House, we see that there is a constant attempt, at least, to negotiate, to find solutions. Dr. Harding, do you see this level of trying to find solutions to our problems happening here in Guyana?
It will take some time or change in the leadership of this nation, because I don't think either sides, the three sides that we're talking about, trust each other. There is a total breakdown of trust in the leadership in this country. They're not able, except they're going to have a drink or a cocktail or see each other socially. But when it comes to doing business for Guyana, I have yet to see that relationship of trust and camaraderie and relying on each other for decisions to be made concretely for this nation. It doesn't happen.
Why do you think this is so? Is it because all sides believe that they have a monopoly on ideas and solutions?
Partly so, but it goes back to the young people call it hate mentality. It goes back to I am the best and you're inferior to me, and therefore you cannot tell me what ought to be. I think, too, there's a lot of personal feelings involved in a lot of the decision-making in our nation. It's all personalized. Scores have to be settled. You know, you always get the feeling there's a vendetta there from adult perspective, people who have worked across nations like me, and the ordinary Guyanese, the young people. They are so tired of the fight. It's like they're listening to their parents fight when they're very small, and they want to run under the bed and hide, or they want to drink some alcohol and get drunk. A lot of them have chosen that so that we have a nation sporting the highest level of alcohol consumption in the region and the fourth in the world per capita. Those are dangerous signs that your nation is in crisis and that we got a chaos at the leadership level.
I have a little different answer to this than Dr. Hardin, who I do respect quite a bit. I think these are ideological issues. The PPPC, in particular the PPP as a unit, is a party of the working class, of the masses. It gains its strength from the masses. The things the party addresses or attempts to do is paramount to what they feel and see as the need of the ordinary man and society as a whole. The history of the PNC in the early days was very similar, but then things changed. It changed under Hoyt, in particular, where the party became more a party that is geared towards a class of people. Now, if you look carefully at the nature of Mr. Granger, you'll see not only is he a military person, but he's a military person who took a position in the early days that the army in power must subject itself to the party in power. I mean, this is very important, and you can't deny this.
What basis, though, do you have for coming to such a conclusion that he would have
this is what
taken
he said.
that
This
position?
is his view. This has been his historical position.
He has said this.
He has said this, and I think he's written about this, that the party, that the army must subject itself to the party in power. Furthermore, everyone on this planet is familiar with the atrocities that was committed against the people of this country through illegal elections, rigging of elections, intrusion of people's private right. And when Mr. Granger was in the army, he said nothing about this. There is not a single statement by Mr. Granger condemning those wrongdoings. There's not a single statement. So I don't take Mr. Granger serious when he speaks about the lack of democracy and when he speaks about lawlessness. He has endorsed lawlessness by not staying his position against the historical lawlessness that was imposed on the people of this country. And I'm saying if one has a warped analysis or a warped perception of what society should be, that person will be in a difficult position to speak about somebody else. So I don't think fundamentally he has a position on this matter. Now, the AFC, to me, with the AFC, and this is where I agree with Dr. Harding, AFC is an organization of bitterness. These are people who are outcast or were driven away or driven out for ideological reasons from the PPP. And they're still upset at the PPP. If you listen to them carefully, 90% of the time is that Moses Nagamuto Cameron speaks on any issue. It's an attack on ex-President Jagdeo. They personalize the politics of Guyana. They see their whole world as cussing President Jagdeo, as opposed to sitting down with the government and with the other opposition and to come up with projects or a process can meet the needs of the Guyanese people.
Do we have a real deep-seated problem here in terms of, first of all, let me make it clear that the AFC and APNU were invited to be a part of this discussion, but their representatives could not make it at this particular time for the recording due to other pressing issues they indicated to me. It would have been great to have them here to directly respond to this. But as a young person myself, I've grown up listening to the PPP and PNC engage in this, what seems to be a perpetual battle and fight with each other, against each other. And my question is this: does the parties, the PPP, the PNC, believe or think that there's a large or significant number of young people out there who make up a significant part of the electorate who are more concerned about their standard of living now, how life is now for them and how it's going to be for their children, than they are with what took place 20, 40, 100 years ago? And if there is a view such as this that is shared in both parties, why is there not a movement by both parties to go forward, to leave what is behind, and to look ahead?
But what I'm saying is it's an illogical process you're asking. For example, let's go to Israel. Should we tell the Jewish children they must not think about Hitler and the period millions were killed or destroyed?
No, remembering the past is important. I believe a famous quote actually states that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. But when you allow the past to dictate how you act in the present, it's a problem.
And it overtakes your 24/7.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't think that's the case. For example, we have to consistently remind people, and I think we have a right to, that when we were growing up, 20, 30 years ago, that there was no potable water in your house. There were no proper roads, and 20 people live in a house. By emphasizing these things, we can let young people know and see the level of development in this country. It's important we know these things they see today. When they look at the housing schemes at Heckles and at Diamond, they must not believe this just came out of the sky, because we need to ask ourselves why it couldn't be done under the PNC.
But it was. I mean, let's be
was
fair.
Nothing was
It
done
was.
under the
We
PNC.
did a. Oh, please, come on.
Tell me.
Come on, look at all the housing schemes that never
Which
was
housing
in this
scheme?
nation. You got West Rheinveld, you got
But
in
some
its
of that was
day.
done by Janet Jagan.
Man, look, listen. Okay, West Rheinveld and Lane Avenue. But even after that, you had an expansion of West and East. You have an expansion of South
About
Rheinveld.
all the other villages
You
in this
have
country.
villages all
Which
over.
villages?
In Mahaika, you had housing schemes. All over this nation, you had a road so that we didn't have to have another Chapman incident
PNC built
and
one
criminality that
The only
happened.
road the PNC built
Listen.
might be the quarantine.
Oh, no.
And
You had the Linden
Which road?
Highway. You had the bridge across the Demerara River. You have schools. You have clinics.
Schools.
We would not have had that Chapman River, that highway there from Linden, if you didn't have Chapman, that cruelty that happened to people in our nation. Now let's go there, okay? It makes absolutely no sense. In 2010, the people, the young people, the businessmen of this nation said to me, thank God for a breath of fresh air. You don't have to go back to 28 and 30 years. It's ignorance.
No, we have to go
It is
back.
destroying our people. Today, we still have 14 and 13-year-olds talking to me about how racist this government is, how racist this nation is. And it hurts to hear 13 and 14-year-olds telling me this, because that's what's being preached to them.
By who?
Let us, by you, by everybody
By APNU.
else. Okay? Because those young people don't have a chance as they see it here. They don't have a chance. They feel this Guyana is not for them. It is not theirs. They cannot participate, and it will not accept them. And that is very serious. Don't blame them, but help to get across the messages that can help our people to feel that they're part of this nation. This nation is theirs, and they must go out there, explore it, and develop it.
Yeah, but we cannot. But
No.
that might be so, but we cannot take the wealth and the hard-earned money of others to give it to those who don't have.
Oh,
what we have
look,
to do,
man.
we have to create.
That is
No,
your
I'm
belief
saying-
as a communist and a socialist.
No.
Coming out of that concept is that you take from the rich and give to the poor.
So
That's
you-
what you preach.
so you
I
think
am
we should
not.
do
I'm
that?
not that.
But
I'm not
saying-
about that. I am about sharing.
I am saying is, but we
I'm
can't.
about- yes, let us
I'm
share.
we're about doing what we're doing. We're about providing the mechanism so everyone can participate in society. We're not about taking away the
All
wealth
I'm
of others.
asking, let us be fair.
You think this government
Let us
is unfair?
be fair, of course.
Well,
I
give me an
have
example.
personal experiences,
How is
but
the
I don't
government
want to
unfair?
go there.
How is the government unfair? You cannot say we
People
have
already
Hold
feel
on.
it.
Listen,
At 13 years of age and 14 years
yeah,
of
but
age,
I can
a young person
I can
feels
show
it.
you. I can show you the thousands of Guyanese that have benefited under the PPP government.
Oh,
Whether
I'm
it be in
not saying
housing,
many people
whether it be
have
in the development of the
benefited.
village. I grew up in a village called Buxton. And when I was growing up in Buxton, there was never a proper road in Buxton. Never, not one. When I was
You're
growing
too
up,
old, Odinga.
when I was growing up in Buxton, there was never a proper road in Buxton.
You're too old.
20 years ago in this country, you couldn't find a proper school. All the schools didn't have roofs, schools didn't have steps, teachers selling sugar cake. You can see the natural development of this country under this government. And I'm saying the PNC have shown that they're incapable of managing this government and managing society.
But it's not PNC's PPP doing
No,
it.
but we are managing this society.
If you've just joined us, you're listening to Hard Talk. Today we're chatting with Dr. Faith Harding and the People's Progressive Party Civic MP, Mr. Odinga Lumumba. We're discussing the issues surrounding the possibility of there being a snap elections being held here in Guyana. We're having a very spirited discussion. Mr. Lumumba, you're basically saying that on the previous administration, there were very little or no development at all.
None.
And that
Zero
it is important
development. We
for...
can go back to the World Bank record, the IDB records. You don't have to listen to me.
Well, I'm glad that you
Zero
would have
development.
mentioned those agencies and entities because coming to the utterances from international agencies and organizations, right now, almost on a daily basis, we see these same international bodies calling for local government elections to be held here in Guyana. We know that we have not had a local government election since when I believe it was
1994, before you were born, huh?
So that's an issue. No, I was born way before then. Thanks, though, I probably look young.
Yes, you do.
So that's an issue. The issue of transparency and accountability, which directly relates to this call for a snap elections. Do you believe, Mr. Odinga, Mr. Lumumba, that the level of transparency, the level of accountability here in Guyana under this current administration and previous administration since 92 is where it should be?
Listen, I'm saying yes. And I'll give you an example. Before this government came into power, there was no bidding system. I remember when there were 2 or 3 contractors in this country. When a contractor, and I don't want to call names because of their family, when a contractor would be called and given a contract, there were 2 or 3 contractors in this country. This government has created a process where you have a national tender board. We now have hundreds of contractors, including dozens and dozens of African Guyanese contractors. That's one. There's a process, there's a system. That's one. 2, when we got into power, the interest rate was extremely high. I think 20-something%, which means the ordinary man could not borrow money, could not get a housing loan. 3, for over 25 years prior to the PPP getting into power, there was no access to homes or house lots. 30 house lots. I'm telling the record, and Faith, including Faith. I didn't want to call your name. Under Hoyt gave out 30 house lots in this country. Out of that 30, my good friend Faith was one of the 30. Now what I'm saying is, my good friend Faith was one of the 30.
True.
We have given out thousands of house lots. So what I'm saying is, and this has been done through a transparent methodology. Minister Jeffrey was Minister of Housing. He's not with us anymore. But no one can say Minister Jeffrey discriminated in his allocation of house lots and his distribution of house lots in this government.
He did. I bought an
Right?
acre and I get quarter or less.
So what I'm saying is that we can see, let me look at how many people have cars in this country, car owners. Let's see how many small businesses. The point I'm making is that we have embraced a system that allows a fair allocation of resources for all races and all classes.
As you
I'm
are
not saying-
as you are outlining this, Dr. Harding is clearly disagreeing. In fact, she said that she bought an acre of land and got
half
less.
acre and I got much less than that.
It's a question
In
of measurement.
1988.
I think it's a question of measurement.
Please. But I don't want to get personal in
At
this.
least you got a chance to buy half
because-
acre. So it's not discrimination.
And that wasn't under your
I wonder why she got half
administration.
acre.
That wasn't under your administration. I could have paid for half an acre in 1988, and that's what I did with Sugarlands. And after that, by the time the PPP came into power, that was reduced a lot. Okay, but I mean, I've had a lot of discrimination against me once the Chedi Jagan administration came into power, even with the person that they call that is such a good person, Dr. Chedi Jagan. I have experienced such discrimination as a person to get employment in my own nation. But don't let's go there. We're talking about snap elections, and it's a very important issue.
What is there a need? And the answer to this question has to be yes. There is a need for checks and balances.
Yes.
And I believe that to some extent or to a great extent, the Parliament plays that role. If Parliament plays that role, if we agree that there is a need for checks and balances, then what is the power of Parliament, the National Assembly, the opposition parties who combined right now have the majority? When they take action to reduce funding,
but you can't
it is spent.
But you can't be an hindrance to growth and development. And that's the point. That's why I want to go to American Obama. You cannot be a hindrance to growth and development. You cannot, because you have a one-seat majority, just say no without any logic to it, and say no when it breaches the Constitution. You cannot say the president and his staff can't have resources. You cannot say that. So, because you're saying the president can't rule. It's basically a coup. If you should say the president must not have a budget, let me deal from a technical sense in terms of what has caused this uproar by the opposition. The Minister of Finance said we have to put money back in the budget so the president and the arm of the presidency can function. How can that be unconstitutional? How can that be terrible? How can that be anti-democratic? They have moved in an anti-democratic manner by denying the president access to necessary funds for administering the society. This is not a case where the president is asking for money to keep a party on 65 Beach or to keep a picnic.
Or to buy Christmas cards.
The AFC is saying that, and this is since they indicated through the Vice Chairman Moses Nagamutu that they're looking at moving that motion. They're saying that they've since gone out into various communities and that the feedback that they're getting is that people are going for this. I would like to ask you, what feedback is the PPPC getting from its constituents when they go there?
We're a political party. We defend our political positions and our constituency, but because we're in government, we have to defend the people of Guyana as a whole. If the AFC in APNU feels that they have to go forward, that's their political right and that's the democratic right. Our right is to repel that. We cannot tell them what to do. We cannot force them to do something in contradiction to what they want to do. The General Secretary of the party made a statement yesterday. Do what you have to do. And we will have to do what we have to do. I mean, Dr. Harding is correct that it's whether a poor country like Guyana can afford to have election again and this chaotic situation again, that's a different issue. But what I'm saying is that we are not in a position to tell anyone in a democratic process that they cannot call for an election. That's their choice. Our choice is to go to the public and express and show our position, show what we have done, make comparisons, show what has not been done by those who want to be in power. And that's where you go back to the past to the present.
Has there been much deliberation at Freedom House in the PPPC's camp relating to this issue in terms of the strategy going forwards if a snap election is to be called?
That's internal. I cannot give you that information at this point. Those are internal information.
Okay. Could you indicate if there is any talk internally without giving the results of the talk?
There must be talk. We're not a foolish political party. If the opposition say they have a snap elections, obviously we have to sit down, we have to listen to what they're saying, and we have to contemplate what the next move would be. Obviously, we must do. We're not robots. We're not goons. So we're not sitting on our butt and not reacting. Of course, we have to prepare for the eventuality, whatever that might be.
So as it is right now, Mr. Lumumba and Dr. Harding, you're here. You observe daily the goings on, so to speak. It appears as if a move of no confidence, a snap election, an early election is inevitable.
I don't know how serious it is. I know Mr. Nagamut has written on it. He's not here as was planned. I would have been interested on a one-on-one to discuss it. You can call for no confidence. Where does that go in this nation of ours? You know, I don't know that it means that the government will just fold up its books and files and walk out and you walk in. That's not what it means. And there has to be a lot of work on the ground to affect any kind of change in this nation. And that work has not yet begun.
What happens, though? I don't know if anyone could sit and determine what the exact results of an election would be. What happens if the results from an election happening now is similar to 2011, where there is still a division in Parliament? Would Guyana then be in a state of perpetual snap elections until either the government wins back the majority or the opposition, one party or the other?
You're talking to the wrong person. I think you need to talk to the AFC. We will continue to govern under all conditions. If the results are the same, we have to govern. If the results are such that we get a bigger majority, we'll also have to govern. But listen, you learn from your experiences. I think regardless what happens, that the PPPC has an obligation to learn from his experience and to work with whoever's in the opposition. I think we have not resolved all the issues that separate us, but I think there's been a great attempt by the President Ramotar to accommodate the opposition. I think, especially with the various commissions, I think it's a good step. And I think in time, I think there's a room for working together in many areas. I think our problem is that the opposition doesn't understand that it's opposition. And opposition doesn't mean your government. The opposition cannot continue to say, you must not do this, you must not do that. The opposition has to say, we think you should do this. And why don't we look at another alternative than to say, I'm just going to vote it down. I have said for years that the weakness in the opposition is the inability to come up with a counter budget or let's look at alternative budgets. Let's look at the U.S. Congress, how the Republicans function. Brown puts a budget on the table, they put another budget. They say, listen, this is our framework.
Exactly.
And let's see from your framework and my framework how we can work things out. Whether there's some similarities, and when there's definitely no similarity, let's cast it aside. Not vote it out. Then we agree to put it next, put it on the, just put it over here, on the back burner. Resolve what we can resolve and move ahead. We find that in Guyana, the AFC and the APNU, they proceed with an historical arrogance that does not allow the government an opportunity to interact or to study their alternative position. Because most times they don't have an alternative position. Their only position they have is no, no, no.
Dr. Harding, you've been a long-time member of the People's National Congress Reform. From your position now of observing what is going on in Parliament and nationally, generally speaking, how effective do you think the APNU, of which the PNCR makes up a significant bloc, how effective do you think the opposition has been in negotiating with government, in trying to find middle ground, and in so doing, not being in a position to necessarily rush for a vote of no confidence?
I think that's why they're probably waiting. But I see a level of arrogance, as Odinga Lumumba was saying just now, that people start off when it might be how the media puts it forward, but it's one of arrogance and not one of cooperation. You don't get the sense that here are two important groups, government and opposition, working together to help this nation get up off its knees. We're a nation in crisis, whether anyone wants to disagree or not. And it's frightening because people now want to jump off of this nation. I am glad to see a group like Brew Caps come forward, of young people who are serious, who got the experience, and they got an outreach that is going to be massive if they really take their job seriously. It's that kind of nature that we need. If we could have the APNU behaving in ways that people, I don't see them attracting anybody new. I don't see them attracting any funds for anything, So whatever resources they have to sell off, because that party is not attracting a new bundle of wealth. That party is not attracting a bundle of energy into it. I haven't seen it. So they can't take that bundle of wealth and energy to the PPP or to the government body or to their partners in opposition to make a difference to the governance of this nation.
What do you think some of the major challenges might be that is inhibiting their ability to do the very things you just mentioned?
The very thought process, the way they see governance, the way they see leadership, it is one of way past. It's not a current day leadership style. It is not the world is a village and that Guyana is a little river in that village that needs to be developed. They don't see it that way.
Dr. Harding needs help. She needs to talk about how they treat you because you decided you want to be the leader of the PNC, how you were brutalized.
It gets. I don't want to get personal because too much is hurting in this nation.
I know.
And a lot needs to be done with the leadership of, and I'm not talking about just Mr. Granger. He's young in politics. He's young in thinking politically. He doesn't have that within him.
But he's not young in understanding dictatorship.
But he's older than I am, and I'm old, But what I'm saying is that what we need is a new thinking, a new fire, a new energy, we've got to do this together. I am doing nothing unless it is together. Because together we can turn wheels. Together we can take this nation forward. Together all those mountains and valleys and rivers can be developed in this nation. And the vision that I had for this country can be met. If our leadership will just open up, become young and current in its thinking, and to be well advised, and stop looking at vendettas. And that in 2000, whatever, I did this or I did that, and a lot of nonsense. It's over. The party's over. Didn't you get the memo? Read the memo of the world today.
Dr. Harding, would you be open to re-entering the PNCR at a different level, maybe?
Not as it is set up now, not the people in the leadership there, no. I'm not. I can't believe I was coming up here. And I'm saying, I cannot believe that born into that party, that Congress place has absolutely no meaning to me. I don't even remember it exists. And that was a frightening thought, that I don't remember Congress Place exists. I helped to build that place. In the 1970s, when I returned here, it was, wow, the dream, and the dream of LFSB, and I can't believe the way I feel about it. No, I wouldn't, not under the current leadership. And it's not only great, it's the whole band of leadership. I got over it when I walked out of the last Central Executive meeting. I was wiped clean. Thank you, God.
Would you then be open to join in one of the existing parties?
Not yet. I haven't seen one that builds the fire in my belly.
Well, Mr. Lumumba, the PPPC doesn't build the fire in Dr. Harding's belly. I would want to ask you, though, Mr. Lumumba, what are some of the shortcomings you see the PPPC is grappling with? And the reason that I ask you this, I think by now we have to accept that something went wrong last elections, because if something did not, then the PPPC would have been able to retain that majority.
I'm not sure whether it's something went wrong. I think when you're in power for a number of years, a long period of time, people get tired of you sometimes, number one. Secondly, I think sometimes when you're in power or you're in position for a number of years, you get slow. You take things for granted. And I think thirdly is that because I don't think we took enough time to show people, convey to people what our achievements in a non-antagonistic manner. I think we have done so much in this
When
country.
you say non-antagonistic,
Without quarreling, without fussing, without sounding harsh. I think our tone could be less harsher. I think what we have done is remarkable in housing and education and infrastructure. But I think if we can subtly, in a more smoother manner, I mean, here who's talking, Lumumba, right? But here...
Yeah, no, you put me back.
In a more subtle manner, if we can show, in particular young people, what we have done, what we achieved, where we came from. See, I know you don't want to talk about, but we got to talk about where we came from, but in a subtle manner. I remember I did a presentation in Parliament 2 years ago in a budget debate, and I pretended I was a overseas Guyanese who had been gone for 25 years. And I went through a narrative of when I left the airport and I traveled around Guyana in a taxi and made observations. And I was talking to my neighbor and my cousin next to me and said, for example, when I left Faye, this alley was wasteland. Now I come and see 3,000 houses. When I go up by Micah and them place, I used to remember a man pulling water on a cattle reel, and an old lady got a big drum with water on she head. Now I can go upstairs in the neighbor and I can bathe and get water for drink. And now the seed school got paint and I went through this process. And I'm saying is, if we need to spend more time to show people what we have achieved, and also now to show people what we have in mind for the next 10, 20 years, particularly young people. I think we didn't do enough of that. Where do we go from here? And that goes back to what Dr. Harding is saying, that, okay, I mean, let's not rub it too hard in what happened in the past, but we have to rub it once they have the Grangers and the Grenadiers around who pretend that these things didn't happen. You see, if there were a different leadership, then we don't have to talk about that. But when you have a leadership who came from the army...
But do you run the risk?
Let me say this. We have a leadership that denied me the right to vote, stole the ballot boxes, observed murders and killings of people who tried to protect democracy, participate in some form of oppression, including the death of Rodney. Mm-hmm. When the same people, I'm not saying they were involved in it, but went through the process, when these same people are now pretending to be the new thought, the new idea, that they suddenly were born. They're 70 years old, but yet they were born suddenly. They're fresh. They're fresh with ideas. It scares the hell out of me to know that these people who supervise and administrated oppression and destruction of an economy are attempting to come back into power, then I have to go back into gear. I must talk about the past. But I agree, we have to do it in a balanced manner, talk about what we've achieved and what we plan to do 20 years from now.
Do you think
And
by...
don't blame people wrongfully.
No,
Because this happens a lot, huh?
I certainly-
Because
I
I've been
didn't-
part of that process.
Well, I didn't blame
too.
you.
You didn't blame me, but I mean, come on. You know, a lot of things get said and nobody goes back even beyond that.
That is true.
In the 60s, you
Well.
know, when we suffered a lot. And that when you came back, you left during the colonial period or post-colonial period. By the time you came back, PNC had done so much, you didn't even know. But listen, the important thing here is, for me, currently, when you look at Georgetown, I would say the PPP would lose heavily if they went to a snap election. Because you have an opportunity here to show people that you think they vote for you, that you still care about them, and you could make Georgetown the most pristine, beautiful place. You've got it.
We can do that with the
And
mayor.
you've done
We can do it-
absolutely nothing about
think
it. Get the mayor out.
We can do it with the
Then
present
with
mayor?
elections, do something. Just don't sit
Are
there.
you-
You know, they
are
named
you-
a village in Liberia. Do something about it.
Are you
Just
willing,
don't sit
are you
there.
willing to be the next mayor of Georgetown?
No, I don't want to be mayor of Georgetown. I passed those days. But I'm saying that this, if I were in the administration of this nation, my capital city would be the place that will be a showpiece, given the circumstances in this nation. You got it, us in a death trap who live in this city. You know, every day somebody comes dumping garbage in front of my residence. I have to pay somebody to come and clean it up. You know, vagrant was sleeping on my property last night, and by the time I'm getting in there, he tell me he gonna kill me. Why going in there? He gonna kill me or whatnot, threatening me. I called the police. I ain't see them yet. But these are the things you feel very unsafe. You feel unhealthy living in Georgia. And that would have been the first thing that I would have done in this nation, and to keep it up. Talking about the mayor in 94, you couldn't be closer to the PPP than the current mayor. He was in bed. Everything was Janet Jagan. So there's no excuse for that. It had anything to do with that. 94, you were running the nation. This city should be your pristine example of your governance. Clean up the city. Clean up Georgetown. It's larger now than it ever was. Make it look beautiful, PPP, and people will vote for you. I might even consider you PPP.
Well, as a city dweller,
You know-
I must admit and agree to some extent that the city is in a very
all
terrible
have- we
state.
all have our problems
I
in
know
the
that
city.
there is a move now to activate a $1 billion cleanup initiative. I'm reading about this in the newspapers and seeing it on television.
But Faith is
1
correct.
billion?
It has to be permanent. We have to, and it starts from the leadership, and it has to be permanent. I remember the days when I went to Beard's private school. I remember there had ladies and men with long boots, and they
Cleaning the drains.
cleaning the drain. They used to turn on the water, and the water had certain amounts for force, and they turned on in the gutter. Then the ladies and the men with brooms is a push,
Yeah, push.
and they work continuously
I mean,
on
you
a
live
daily
around Queens,
on
so
a
have
daily
you.
basis. These streets and the drains were cleaned 2-3 times a day,
Yeah.
every single day.
Well, I definitely hope that we do get back to that.
Yeah.
Your final words, if you were in a position to send a message to the opposition, Dr. Harding, to government, Mr. Lumumba, on snap elections or not, what would that message be? What would that advice be?
Focus on bringing order to your business in Parliament. Focus on the development of the people of this nation. People are hurting. People are crying. When you have a suicide rate as we have, when you have an alcohol consumption rate as we have, we are in serious problems in the society. This city needs cleaning up. Guyana needs cleaning up. Guyana needs development. I hurt for Guyana because it's so rich in resources. The potential is there. People are crying out. They don't know how to make the next step. Opposition, that's what you need to help them with. You don't need to be in government to help develop the people of your nation. You can do it community by community, village by village, region by region, in pockets. things that I did in 1998 still stand strong as measures, as objects of development in communities. That's what you have to do, APNU. Go out there and work with the people, work with your government to access the funds and the programs that are there that you voted for the people of this nation. Work it. Snap elections, waste of time, I think, at this point in our country. We need to prepare our people. We need order in this nation, not only in Georgetown or where you live, but we need order in this nation. And I'm not only talking about law and order, I'm talking about administrative order. It just isn't there. And we need to put those things in place, and we need the rule of law to rule the day.
Mr. Lumumba.
Well, first of all, like I said earlier, and I want to repeat to some degree what the General Secretary of the party said. The opposition got to do what they have to do. If they feel they need a snap election, then so be it. But we're here to govern. Whether we have 1 seat less or 2 seats more, we continue to govern. We think we have done enough work to justify another term. We think we'll do better at another elections. I think we have learned, we made some mistakes. In society, when you're 20, 30 years in power, you make mistakes, and sometimes you get arrogant with the mistakes. And we think we correct those mistakes. I think we will be able to. I think people would like to see us continue. I think people are reasonable. They know the work that we have done. I think we will have to reach out more, explain ourselves more, better, be a little more humble. And I don't think the opposition has the capacity to manage this country. It's the same leadership from the past, the leadership who was involved in oppression and undemocratic processes, who violated people's civil rights, who violated the tender process, who had never respect for law and order. I think the AFC, their personal vendetta, they just upset at Jagdio. They see Jagdio at night. They jump up at night, they shout at night and holler Jagdio. I mean, we ready for whatever eventuality. If there's a snap election, we just got to roll with it.
Okay, you've been listening to Hard Talk. Today we've been chatting with Dr. Faith Harding, former member of the People's National Congress Reform, and Mr. Odinga Lumumba, member of Parliament, People's Progressive Party. Mr. Lumumba, Dr. Harding, thank you again for being here, and we do hope to have you again soon on this program.
Well,
thank you very much, Chris. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. I want to come when Moses is here.
I'll arrange that.
Tell Moses he need to show up.
All right, thank you again.
All right.